Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today, we've got a really special episode as we've got a Paralympian on the episode. It should be really cool. We're going to be looking at his career from starting off with Team GB, winning medals at the Paralympics, and perhaps riding a little bit too close to disaster. Because today, I'm joined with none other than Paralympian George Peasgood. George, pleasure to have you on, mate. First of all, how are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, all is going quite smoothly considering the position I've been in. Yeah, thank you. Though.
Well, perfect stuff, George. And based on that introduction alone, I mean, it sounds like pretty much a whole movie plot, that introduction. It should be some really cool stories. On that, though, do you ever get a chance to just sit back and sort of reflect on your life and career?
I do actually. I'm more so now. Yeah, since my brain injury, because at the moment I've broken my foot, and so I've got more bit more time on my hands. So yeah, that quite often I do find myself just thinking, wow, I've done quite well in some aspects, but then not as well in others. It just gives me
George,
more time to reflect, but yeah.
I think you're underselling yourself there. Just honestly, like I said, from the script I was doing earlier, genuinely, there's so many cool bits which we're going to be talking about in this episode. So, really looking forward to it. And just to start it off, let's take it back right to the start of your career. Can you remember growing up? And were you always in a sportsy mood? Were you always into it?
So yeah, like I've always been in a sporty family. So my parents been doing marathons since, well, not actually no, triathlons started off in the family back in 2007,
Wow.
and then my dad got involved. Well, no, my parents was doing marathons around the same time. And then my dad got involved with triathlon, and then yeah, that like my brother represented GB for age group and like for Elite Super Series. And I think both parents have competed internationally for age group, and yeah, both my parents have raced. I think my mum's raced 20 something marathons,
Blimey.
so just always been doing marathons and well, just been a very sporty family all the way through childhood and growing up. So yeah,
Well, I suppose based on that, it was always going to be triathlons you go into. You were never going to be a footballer based off of that.
no, yeah, there was always gonna be triathlon or some like swimming, cycle, or running or something. But yeah,
Well,
triathlon,
that's awesome.
perfect. Yeah.
Can you remember your first race then and really getting into triathlons?
Oh, I can't. I think I remember the first one was a Warden Tri Junior Tri. Yeah, Warden Tri Club. The junior session had a triathlon back in 2010, I want to say.
Wow.
And like I think the run was 2.5K and took me probably 24 minutes. So not the
Wow, that's
best pace.
awesome.
But that's just me being very mean, like critiquing myself already then. When I was
To
yeah.
be fair, I'd be happy with a score like that, and I'm 18, so yeah, I think that probably sums it up. Looking back though, that was probably your first real taster of getting into sport. I know obviously growing up, you had a leg operations, quite a few on your leg. Did you ever find it hard to get into a sport and find one that was really suited for you?
Well, I got into triathlon after my last leg operation. So before then, I was just like doing school sports, so rugby, football, hockey, even rounders, netball, I think. But yeah, just doing everything in school sports and everything I was good at, I just carried on doing. And then I got into triathlon after I had an operation, the leg lengthening operation in 2009. And yeah, just gone to in the Tri Club in 2010 and just snowballed from there really.
Well, I've got to ask about it as well. Like you said, by the sounds of it, you started out doing a variety of different sports. You clearly loved triathlon, so and you really got into it. At what stage did you realise, wow, I'm actually pretty good at this and I could actually go competitive.
I would actually only say that really happened in 2014.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's when the Rio Paralympic categories def- got announced. So then the category I competed in was selected to race in Rio. So then I thought, well, I can give this a good old shot here. And that's when we all started to get funded a bit more and things just all started to happen a bit more formally. So that was probably when I actually decided, yeah, I will give this a shot. And that was when I moved up to Loughborough and started my degree. So it all just coincided very nicely.
You mentioned the Paralympics, and that's really where you found your love. I'm not sure if you watched the 2012 Olympics, obviously held in this country, but if you did, how key and inspiring was that for you in terms of your journey?
Well, for 2012, I was actually part of the Paralympic Inspiration Program. So
Wow.
the PIP, which is a movement, the able-bodied Olympics have a side of it, but the Paralympic side is called Paralympic Inspiration Program, and it's for like all the upcoming athletes that were looking to compete at the games. Each sport can, I think, is nominate two people, and they just get to go to the games, get accreditation, get media training, get go through all the same, like very not the same things, but very similar things.
Hmm.
And then we get to go to the athlete village and go and watch some events. So yeah, I went to London, went to see the athletics and some. I don't think it was some swimming or cycling, but I think it was mostly athletics. And there was a big group of us from loads of different sports, and yeah, just we really got to embrace the atmosphere and see what the games was all about. Go and meet some participants and just yeah, really get stuck in with the whole game's environment and movement.
Being a part of that movement, did that just reinforce not just your love, but perhaps dreams of one day making it to an Olympic Games?
100%. Like, because you just get to go and basically just see what games is like. So I'm a bit annoyed that I did go to London instead of Rio because I mean, if you got to go to the Paralympic Inspiration Program as for Rio, you get a free trip to Rio basically. So
Yeah.
that'd be like mega,
It's not
and you don't
bad, is it?
get a race now. But then yeah, so I got to go to London and we went to where the holding camp was in Bath
Wow.
and went to like a few different places as well. But yeah, it was a massive part, like it's a big part of my inspiration, like and really helped me going forward. And it gave me a lot of lessons for the whole Paralympic movement and to understand what the games was all about. So yeah, it was really good.
You've actually just raised a really good point about really changing the games for the better because I'm pretty sure in 2012 they didn't actually have a category for doing para triathlons. I'm pretty sure that came in 2016 through the Rio Games. So looking back, do you think you were one of the pioneers in helping that eventually being added to the Paralympics?
Not till now. I'm not gonna say that I was now because like I think the whole Paralympic movement for the sports is just trying to get equal to the Olympic sports. So with the triathlon being added in, I think it was Sydney. It was a matter of time as to waiting as to when it would get into Paralympics as well. But then it was just trying to get the right engagement levels for the Paralympics and right trying to get the competitive numbers up and try and get the sport more well known and get the sport a bit more elite.
Definitely, and I'm really looking forward to hearing some of your stories from Rio, which we will be speaking about later in the episode. But before we do that, I'm going to take you back a few years in 2013 when you won your first major medal, a bronze, at the ITU World Championships. I'm pretty sure that made you the youngest medal winner at 17. Can you talk us through your memories of that?
I think I was the youngest British medal winner, but Yeah, that was incredible because I was again like that was in London, so that was a bit like my own triathlon games, if you like. Like if triathlon was in the Paralympics in London, that was probably similar to that. And that was like awesome because yeah, my whole family and friends got to come down and watch, spectate and things. It wasn't the best weather on the day, but it was an incredible experience and the British crowd really got behind, so it was really good.
I've got to ask you this question because I've spoken to quite a few elite athletes now, and they normally all say the same thing. They don't live in the moment upon winning a medal. After winning, they don't really bask in the celebrations. Instead, they just look at what's next. What else can they win? Was that the same with you after winning this first medal?
Good question. I think it was a bit like, so are you just won? What's next? But then it was also like, just appreciate the moment because yeah, you've got to like appreciate the little, not even the little wins, the big wins along the way, because you don't know at what point it's going to be the last big win. So I did appreciate the moment. Like we celebrated in style, but I didn't let it get my head a bit too big. So yeah, I did a bit of both.
You mentioned about not letting your head get too big. Winning a medal at such a young age, how important that you didn't get complacent?
Well, I think it's just it shows the drive that was in me. I think that helped for like the achievements I had afterwards. But so yeah, I would say it was quite important. I didn't get too complacent. But yeah, yeah, I think that answers the question. But
Yeah, definitely. Well, move forward a year in 2014. This is one that you're going to have to sort of explain for the audience because, probably speaking from myself as well, I don't really understand it. But apparently, there was a big classification structure which was changed in 2014,
yeah,
and I believe it had a real impact on you. So, could you explain what happened there and why it had such an impact?
yeah. So one of the things for to be for the classification system for the sport to get into Rio was that the classifications had to be like the spectrum of the classifications had to be narrowed a bit, so you had to fit more
Okay.
people into less categories. So basically, in my case, the below elbow impaired athletes, which were in a lesser impaired category than me at the time, were mixed with the below knee impaired athletes, my category at the time, but not the below knee amputees. So myself being a below knee impairment, I got put in with the below elbow impairments, so the two
Ah.
categories got merged in that aspect. And then below knee amputees got their own category with mild neurological impairments as well. So that's like how that got shifted. It's because basically the classification system says meter long had to get narrowed down a little bit into say 70 centimeters long, for example.
Blimey.
And it's not that people were told they couldn't race anymore, it's that the whole classification's boundaries got changed. So yeah, I was put into almost a harder classification.
Well, definitely. And you mentioned about, yes, it was harder for sure, but despite this challenge, you still finished top 10 in all five of your events. How important was
That was really important because like that's a build up to Rio, so I had to compete well there, and it just really solidified my place in the category and the classification to be able to race in Rio, and that I think was what got me the bipartite invitation slot for the games.
Ah,
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. Leading up to the events then, how do you go about securing a spot in Team GB? Is it based on prior experience, prior results, or is it about doing actual trials for the team itself?
So for Rio, we didn't actually. No one actually qualified a place for themselves at the games. They qualified a
Ah,
place for the nation at the games. So you don't qualify a place for yourself at the games. You qualify a place for the federation, so the country at the games, and then it's down to the country to select who they think is best to compete at the games. But then in the selection criteria, that's when it can quite often. Well, it will say like if you finish in this place, you then qualify to be selected for the games, and that's when, like, say I finish 10th, and if or 11th rather, if I finish 11th in a qualification race, but then the automatic selection is the top 10, I wouldn't get selected. But then if they had another person did finish inside the top 10, they could select me even though I didn't finish
ah.
inside the top 10. So, yeah, it's a bit weird, but then, yeah. So that's how some qualification and selection criteria doesn't always add up to the general public, I guess. But yeah, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
by the sounds of it, it is quite a confusing way of selecting athletes, like you said. But in the year building up to that 2016 games, then, so in 2015, knowing that, did that put any trepidation on what would be considered a normal race, knowing that a place for Team GB in that Olympics was up for grabs?
Yeah, so like that put a bit more pressure on, but then it put a bit more pressure on the races that the other British athlete for Great Britain also was at.
Mm.
So then there's almost like a qualification race or a selection race for the within the year. That mean the other athlete was called Dave. So me and Dave raced each other at the I think it was the European Championships, and the result of that race would would instigate who got selected to represent the country at the games.
Wow.
I I happened to win that race out of us two, so that should mean that I get selected to race and for Great Britain. But then they chose Dave because they thought that I might get actually a bipartite invitation to race in Rio, which thankfully I got. But then I had probably I think it was 2 months of not knowing if I was going to be racing at the games and being told that I wasn't selected to race at the games.
Were you annoyed at that then, that you won your race but you didn't get the invite? How frustrating was that?
Very frustrating, as you can imagine. Yeah, I was bitterly, I was quite bitter and yeah, quite frustrated at that.
So, looking at the ramifications of that now, like you said, you had 2 months of real uncertainty. You couldn't probably fulfill your full prep in that time due to that uncertainty. Probably left you a bit mentally exhausted going into it. So, do you feel like that had an impact when it did get to the eventual Olympics?
I mean, it'd be so easy to sit here and say yes, and like I could have won, but ultimately, probably not. Like, I'm sure I would have had some aspect of difference, but who knows as to how much difference? I just had, I think I had like 2 or 3 days of mulling things over, and then I just had to almost crack on with anticipation of being able to get a race and get an invite and race at the games. So I had to think as I'm trained as though I was racing the games.
Well, that's definitely the mindset you need. And obviously, you would eventually go on to get that invite.
Yeah.
Do you remember the day you found out that you would be representing Team BG? First of all, how did you celebrate? And how did you let all your family know about it?
Yeah, I do remember the day quite vividly because it was the head coach of triathlon called me to let me know I had the spot and had an invite, and he was in the, I think he was driving his kids home in the car from school, and he got this email, and so he had to call me straight away. And yeah, his kids were in the car, and I was I was swearing like a potty mouth. I was terrible. But he never told me those kids were in the car. And I was the first person that swore in front of them. I felt really guilty once I found out. But I didn't find out for years, until years after. But yeah, I was just
Wow.
everything and being like, oh, Johnny, thank you so much. But yeah, I was pro potty mouth. But yeah, yes, I do remember that.
Well, yeah, I can understand why you can remember that. That's hilarious. I could just imagine the coach's kids now going, "Oh, effing George has gone and won it. What a great guy!" He's celebrating that eventual 2021, which we will get onto. But also, staying on the note of Rio, like you said, obviously you got to go out to Rio. That must have been such an amazing experience looking back now.
Yeah, I think Rio was like, obviously I went to the 2012 games as the inspiration program. And then 2016 was more of a trial run, and then Tokyo was I would say, a bit of a better run, but I don't think my last one. So we'll see what happens. But I don't think there was my last games in Tokyo. But anyway, that's probably digressing a bit too much. Um, but yeah, Rio was absolutely incredible because it just gave me like, because I was quite young, and I did have a lot of belief in myself that I would go to another games at least. So I was just like, well, I just got free run or proudest run of what games experience is actually like for an athlete. So yeah, it was incredible.
we we like I said, we've already alluded to the fact there was that time where it was uncertain whether you were going to get to the games, and we've also touched on the fact that this was the first time that a para triathlon was going to be at a Paralympic Games. Do you think that sort of gave you a little bit of a free hit in terms of when you got to the event? No one was really knew what was going on in the terms of everyone was sort of in the same boat with it all being so new to everyone.
Almost, but then I guess because everyone's in the same boat, then everyone's on the same page. So everyone's thinking the same. So I mean, I don't think that I had any particular thing about being the first inaugural event of the games. But yeah, but I wouldn't say so.
Definitely. Well, 100%. And like I said, in the build up to the games, that's probably just as good as the actual games itself. Because I was watching some of the videos you did, well, before the Tokyo games, before the Rio games. You do get painted to be like this sort of mini celebrity, don't you? Where you get to do all the little media things you do, all the TV coverage. I bet that's a really cool moment for you as well.
And it's pretty cool, but it's obviously another reason I do the sport. I do the sport because I love it, so it's just one of them extra things you got to do as well. But it was, yeah, it's yeah, I mean, it must look fairly good from the outside, so yeah,
Do any of the TV appearances be coming on this podcast?
possibly, who knows?
Oh, honestly, good answer, like I said. And also, upon getting to the obviously games, you get presented with a uniform, you get dripped in all the Team GB colours. How special is that? And was that sort of a pinch me moment for you, going like, wow, I've actually made it here?
Yeah, so when you go to the kitting out, you just like go to the kitting out. You get like two massive suitcases full of all your kit, and then you get to try on some clothes, just double check it all fits, and like that's just a bloody incredible because you just get two massive suitcases full of kit basically, and it's pretty damn awesome.
Yeah, I bet it is. Like, imagine wearing that to the gym as well. I would imagine you get to keep all of it as well. So, sort of like say, yeah, I've been to the Paralympics here. Quite a cool little flex there.
Yeah, you get to keep most of it. Yeah, I think it was in Tokyo it was our cycling skin suits we didn't get to keep, and overshoes, but then most of the like casual wear we well, no, all the casual wear we do get to keep. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
That is pretty awesome. And like I said, I have to say, probably a bit of bias, but Team GB, they do some nice kits. But let's talk about the race itself, actually, because obviously, 2016, I'm pretty sure you finished seventh in the end. But when you're actually in the race itself, do you ever get a chance to take in like you're actually in an Olympic Games, or is it just full athlete mindset in it?
I don't think at the Paralympics you get to like enjoy it all as much because you are just pushing so ruthlessly, so much because you're just pushing your body so much. But like you do just look back and like if you do get a chance just to take stock and take note of where you are, it's pretty damn incredible. So yeah.
After that race, then, I bet you were immediately looking at how you could further improve yourself and where you could get to a position where, in time for the next games, you're perhaps medal ready.
100%, yeah. Like I think like I did with my coach, I did a hard debrief straight after the race, but then after like I think after probably 2 weeks when I was back in England, had a cold debrief and like a proper sit down and just talk about things. So that's when we really get to the nitty gritty of how can we make this a better experience next time, and how can we make this more likely a medal opportunity.
Certainly. I'm going to read you out some of your stats from 2017 here. It looked like you certainly picked up some great form in this year. You got a gold at the National Championships, two silvers at the ITU World Cup, and two bronzes at the World Series. When it comes to doing triathlons, how hard is it to keep that consistency?
The winning consistency or like the medal consistency really comes with the training. So as long as you're training well and things are going well in your life and like all the life stresses and things are going well, it's I would say it's fairly easy, but like it's quite hard to keep all the nitty gritty things and getting down into minute details and minutiae of things. It's quite difficult, but that's like what I do like. So for me, I would say it's crazy, but for most other people, it would be like, oh, that's quite difficult.
For sure. I was also looking back as well at where some of these competitions were hosted. By the looks of it, doing what you do, it really did manage to take you all over the world. Looking back now, do you think you were quite fortunate in terms of getting involved and this opening up whole new opportunities for you to get to travel the world?
1000%. Like, I think the statistic I remember is I traveled across the Atlantic 6 times in 6 weeks
Wow.
in 2016. But then we, I think that, not yet, because in 2016, didn't really get to explore. Like, because we were so focused on performance at the games, we get to go to some fantastic places, but we don't necessarily get to explore them places. So the one good thing in Rio, because of the year before the Olympics or Paralympics, we have a Paralympic test event, which is where you just go and like basically just, as it says, test the event itself to see what the conditions on the course will be like. So the year before Rio, we went to obviously Rio and competed on the course, see what it was like. And it was then that we actually got to like go up to the Christ the Redeemer and Sugarloaf Mountain and actually explore the city a bit more. So
I bet that was awesome.
yeah, that was pretty cool. But then, well, no, that was very cool. But then that was the most of the times you don't really get to explore places. We get and race. It's usually get in, race, not get out, but we just leave the countries fairly soon after to get back into
Hmm.
training rhythm and routine and things. Like I think is Yokohama is quite a good example. So Yokohama in Japan, they have a World Series of like mid-May. I think it's around the between the 14th and the 19th of May usually, and I think you fly in on a so you leave the UK on a Wednesday morning, arrive in Japan Thursday, race on the Saturday, and then you're back in UK on the Sunday. So, like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 4 or 5 days. You've gone to Japan and back, so you don't really get much chance to,
Yeah.
or any chance to explore, see the natural environment.
Yeah, that's a bit of a shame you don't get to see it, but at least it's still something you can tick off in your passport at least. Also, on a note of that, I've always wondered this when it comes to Olympians. I've seen a lot of podcasts where a lot of Olympians say they had to fund their own trips, they had to fund their own clothing. For you, how did it go about? How did you get funding for all of this? Because quite expensive by the sounds of it, a lot of these trips.
Yeah, so like as part of being a part of the British Triathlon program, you do get funding. So we do get some support from National Lottery, but then we don't get all our trips paid for, and depends as to what level you are and how high up you finish in races, as to what level you get the next year and what support you get as well. But then it's like a chicken versus the egg. You've got to, but then you go sports eye and the especially in triathlon, well not especially triathlon, but in sports side of things, you have to perform to get the opportunity to get the support. So at some point you do have to fork out your own money and support to get to the races to compete. But yeah, and up to Rio, probably got just over half my travel trips paid for. But like it gives me the chance and the opportunity to get to Rio, so it's all worthwhile.
On that note, then, how important now would you say sponsorship is for a lot of athletes in terms of? I would imagine a lot of people would probably struggle paying those obviously expenses to get to games. So, how important are sponsorships in allowing for people to get to those games?
Sponsorships are pretty crucial. Like, yes, we can survive as athletes with our funding, but it's just funding and it can just be taken away at the end of the year, just like that. There's no guarantee with
Yeah.
funding, so there's no, like, I can't get a mortgage with my funding because there's no guarantee of funding or money or income. So, sponsorship is vastly, so helpful. And, like, sponsorship is how a lot of athletes can get money and afford travel and races and accommodation and things on top of their funding. And they use funding more for just a day-to-day survival of living, really. So yeah, sponsorship and support from friends is massively gratefully received and helpful for athletes.
For you, then, was it also a lot down to crowdfunding as well, trying to get your family, friends all involved to try and give you a better opportunity where you could afford to go to these games?
Yeah, so like that massively helps for like the qualification and the build-up races, and especially with equipment. So like sponsorship is also like for equipment. So for me, my bikes. And although I don't have a direct sponsor, I was helped out a lot by my original bike shop back at my parents' house, New Dale Cycles. So they helped me with like all my race bikes and things growing up, and they really helped me with my equipment and racing opportunities. So that really took off the pressure for having race equipment from that side of things, and then I used that bike from Rio to Tokyo up into 2022. So that bike has won multiple medals. But yeah, so it's really down to like the crowdfunding and the crowd support to be able to afford the races, but also just had to get the good right equipment to race to be able to compete at the top level. It does really make a difference.
Well, for sure, I didn't really understand the full complexity of it before we did this interview, so thanks for shedding a light on that. And going forward into 2018, it did involve you doing some more travelling and also winning a whole lot more medals as well. So I've got it here. You won a gold at the World Series, a silver at the World Cup, and a silver at the ITU Grand Final Gold Coast. Once again, you just seem to step it up another level. Looking back, what do you think led to this step up once again?
I think that was in 2018. It was like I just solidified my place from. I don't think there was any one thing in particular. I think it was just more maturing and becoming more of an athlete and just become more of an elite and just everything literally became more elite. So I wouldn't say there's one thing in particular, but things just started falling into place a bit better.
You mentioned there about trying to make yourself become more elite there. Did that involve trying to improve on aspects that you were good at but not perfect at? So, obviously, with triathlon, it blends a lot of different aspects: swimming, cycling, running. Was there one which you weren't particularly great at that you really had to try and hone your skills in that area?
So I've never been the best runner in my categories. So then I was trying to hone in on the running side of things, but then that's one thing that COVID really helped me with. If we jump forward a few years to COVID,
Ah,
so then because of the COVID rules, lockdown, I moved back to my parents' house for lockdown, and I based my training out of theirs, and I had access to a endless pool while the leisure centres were shut. I could
mm,
do, and that's where I really focused on my running training. So then that's where, I would say my run 5K PB improved. I think it was a minute and a half.
wow,
So
that's a big jump.
that is the year I really focused on things from a running side of things, and that really helped. So COVID was dreadful for everyone, but there's a silver line to a lot of things. And it's about trying to make their silver line from COVID.
Could you also explain the process then, which led to that big jump up in your improvement in performance when it came to running? Is it just about intensifying, I don't know, workouts, for example?
In COVID, I think it was more taking the strain and strenuous activity from my swimming and biking, and put using it on my running, and then recovery. I had really good recovery, and my mum being a physio, I had basically a private physio for most of COVID. Uh, so there are a lot of things, but I think it would just be like the intense focus purely on the running side of things for my recovery, for my sessions and my program. The focus was on the running massively. So thankfully that's where like the most improvement came from. But that's where I was meant to, or where we had aimed for it to come from.
Well, I'm going to take you back to 2018 again, and once again, I'm going to focus on a different aspect. This one involves cycling, because you were chosen to represent GB at the paracycling. Was it hard for you to specialise on just one aspect rather than doing a blend like you do with triathlon?
For me, not really, because I've always nudged me in probably a level above where I'm in triathlon and cycling. So like it was just came to me a lot easier. I was actually, I think in 2017 I went to World Champs for road cycling in Iseo, not Iseo, in Maniago in Italy. And then it was it 2018 when I went to the road to the track cycling world championships. And like for me, I find it quite easy because triathlon is quite chaotic, being three sports.
Mm.
Being able to just focus on one sport is, to me, is quite easy because I'm used to three.
Well, you did pretty well with it. You got a silver in it.
Yeah, not too bad. But yeah.
Not too bad at all getting a silver, making it look easy there, George. On that note, though, did you ever think, after winning that medal, was there any possibility of just specialising and just focusing on one rather than sticking with triathlon?
One, definitely, yeah. And like not all of the cycling, but quite a lot of the cycling staff and athletes were just being like, George, can't just focus on cycling. So
Mm.
that was tempting, but my heart and my love led with triathlon, so that's what I had to do.
Was there still a determination then? So you mentioned about still having that love for doing triathlons. Was that still that determination, that grit to really want to push yourself and get into that next Paralympic Games? Is that what led to you staying with it?
Yeah, and then it almost felt also like if I would switch to just cycling, I would just be going for the easier option. So, and I'm never one to shy away from a hard challenge. So, yeah, I went for the hard challenge and it worked, thankfully. But yeah.
Well, leading up to that 2020 Games then, did you sort of use 2019, obviously amidst all the chaos with COVID, but did you just sort of use that as a free hit to really prep yourself ready for the big games?
Uh, I think like we just use it year on year. So 2019 and 20 was just, well, 2019 was just all about the run up to the games. So I was just trying to really focus. But then COVID hit and it was just like we were just waiting and waiting. But then we were told that the games would be postponed. So then it was just trying to delay things and work on my running
Hmm.
in COVID. That paid off. So then things were looking good for triathlon and games. And then I would actually say it was in 2021 when I thought I had to try and diversify the sport towards the games.
For sure. Also, that process once again of making it to the next games. For you, was it a bit of an easier process getting into the games? Was there more certainty over your spot in the team?
Yeah, there was more certainty around my sport, but then I would say there was a bit of uncertainty around my injury status because I had a stress fracture or stress response leading up to the game, so that then gave me a bit of added pressure. But then that's how I went to Tokyo for two sports as well, or the reason I went for two sports as well, rather.
On that note, then, looking at Tokyo, what would you say the big differences were between Tokyo and the Rio Games?
So Tokyo, we had it was almost COVID rules out in Tokyo. So for Tokyo, you had to be back or leave the country within 48 hours of your sport finishing its last medal event. So then, obviously, we had to come back to this country, but because I competed in Tokyo in two sports, I went from straight from the triathlon venue. I got private taxi all the way to the cycling venue, 2 hours away,
Ah,
and then it was after 48 hours after the cycling race had finished. I had to be on a plane back to the UK. So
wow.
just very different because obviously with COVID rules and restrictions, they were just still a bit more cautious on things. But like with the crowd, didn't really have much of a crowd for Tokyo, and
Hmm.
obviously my parents couldn't travel out for it, so it was a bit of a shame. But it meant the games could take place, so it was good.
Well, some things special certainly happened in those games, which we will be looking at now. Some bits which I'm very excited to be speaking about. First of all, before both the races, could you feel something special was going to happen even before the race got underway?
So I'll say before Tokyo, I kind of was pretty special because I think I was the only British athlete competing in two sports, so that
Oh,
already it feels pretty special in itself. So I can't really be pretty special either way. But going in as world championship medalist for triathlon, but then also as world champion for cycling time trial, I was fairly confident of it being successful games.
did you have so the night before the races then? It wasn't fears for you, it was more confidence that you could get something out of it.
Confidence then, but then also anxiety and anxiousness because then you're just hoping that everything goes well for you. And to be honest, all I hoped for everyone competing was that everyone had a fair race and no one had something they could
Hmm.
blame a poor performance on. So that's what we really want at games or any race is for everyone to be on their A game and be able to deliver 100% of their own performance.
What did you say came first, your cycling or your triathlon?
At the games,
At the 2020 games, yeah.
uh, in terms of priority, triathlon came first, and it came first in terms of order as well.
Ah, okay. So by going first then with the triathlon, just talk us through your memories of that race.
Just generally, it was bloody awesome. Like, remember, like coming out of the water in first, and just on the bike, things didn't quite go as well. Like for me, my power meter wasn't quite working because of the heat. My water bottle had some issues. My foot came out of the bike, out of the pedal, but then it got down, I got into it, and it was really well, and it was progressing well. I then got to run, and things were going well, and like I really managed to hold on to lead as much as possible. Unfortunately, I got overtaken, but only on the, I think it was with a lap and a half to go, or just over a lap to go. But I mean, it was a bloody incredible race. So yeah.
Well, I've got to talk to you about that moment. You finished the crossing line. That means you've won an Olympic medal. You win silver. What a moment that must have been for yourself.
Yeah, so yeah, winning the Paralympic medal, so Paralympic, not Olympic medal, but yeah, the Paralympic medal was it was incredible. Like I actually got to literally get the silverware because it is pure silver, so I got to have the silverware, and yeah, it lives on my mantelpiece, so I'm happy with that.
Can you remember the moment then when you had to get on the podium? You were dripped in all your national colours. How much pride did you have in that moment?
A huge amount of pride, like yeah, I was obviously I wasn't singing the British national anthem, but like because of COVID rules. I think it was the gold medal. I gave the bronze medal winner his medal. The gold medal winner gave me my medal. And then I can't remember who was gave Martin his gold medal. But yeah, like it was pretty bloody incredible because we all just got to enjoy that experience together. It was very surreal.
By winning that medal, do you think that put you in good stead going into the cycling one then?
It put me in pretty good stead because I knew the form was there. I just had to hope that my legs and body would recover, especially with the travel, to be able to compete in 2 days' time and yeah, compete in cycling for the time trial and try and get another medal there.
Didn't go too badly either, did it?
And no, it went rather well. I got bronze medal at that games for cycling, so it went well, but it wasn't quite to my well, I won the World Championships that year, so I wasn't quite up to
Yeah.
the same scratch, but it was good.
Well, looking back now across that whole Olympic Games, two medals, like you said, you were the only one to represent your nation in two different sports. How high does that rank in just overall accomplishments across your whole life?
It ranks pretty damn highly. I'd say it's in the top three, definitely. And the accomplishments across my whole life, yeah, be up there. We're up there.
What tops that then?
Surviving my brain injury.
That's a good answer because that's a perfect segue onto the next question, actually. Like you said, in 2022, obviously beforehand, 2020, you were winning medals, probably in the peak of your sport and activity. And then, like you said, in 2022, you were involved with a major biking accident. I think I remember reading a report that you had a 10% chance of staying alive. For anyone who doesn't know what I'm going on about, could you just explain what happened with all of that?
Yeah, so I think it was 6 weeks after winning my second cycling world championships. I was doing a sprint on a bike ride, and my foot came out the pedal. I threw the handlebars at 43 kilometers an hour, landed on my
Wow.
face, didn't hit anything else other than the floor. So yeah, I think I
Ooh.
fractured 4 or 5 bones in my skull and in my face. I fractured my collarbone and fragmented my scapula, and I had thought I'd broken my fingers and possibly arm, but I don't think I had.
Wow.
I think I had punctured a lung there as well. But I mean, that's probably the least of my worries at that point. But yeah, I was diagnosed with a grade 3 diffuse axonal injury, which is probably one of the most severe brain injuries you can get. And have you heard of Jules Bianchi, the Formula One driver?
Yes, I have.
He passed away, unfortunately, and he was diagnosed with the same kind of brain injury as me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I suppose so. In the midst of all of that, upon waking up, I would imagine you got given, obviously by the doctor, what had happened. You probably couldn't believe it, and the likelihood of you staying alive. In that moment, are you just thankful that you still made it?
Well, yes, but also you don't just wake up like in most cartoons or like TV programs. It's a very altered state of consciousness. So the
Ah,
waking up process probably lasted for more than 2 months. So I remember times when I was in my coma because that's the way that an older state of consciousness works. It works on a scale from like I think it's numbered from 3 to 15, and you fluctuate on the numbers quite a bit. But yeah, I went into hospital as lower grade as you can be, so I was as deep in the coma as I could be, and then it was through the higher stages on where I became more aware of things. But then I was technically out of the coma on I think it was on the 17th of November, but I only felt like I woke up probably on the 13th of January. So that's another two
wow.
months down the line. But
So, upon getting all of that, then, all the information given to you, like you said, it was sort of a slow process, I suppose,
yeah,
getting used to it. Do you think the physical injuries were just as bad as the mental ones you had suffered during it?
the neurological injuries and brain injuries I suffered were far greater than my orthopedic injuries.
Wow.
And like my broken collarbone didn't heal for, I think it took 2 months for my collarbone starting to heal, but that was the least of my worries.
I bet, knowing probably what you like as an athlete, I bet one of the first questions you had after getting back to fully consciousness was, will I be able to race again?
Definitely, yeah. And that's one reason why I had in my private hospital room in Homerton in London, I had a turbo on my bike in there.
Wow. That's pretty, well, I didn't know that either.
But
Like
yeah,
you said,
I think
wow,
I'm
that's
the only
pretty cool.
person to have a bike and turbo in the room, in their own room in a regional neurological rehabilitation unit.
I was going to say, you sort of stunned me for words there when you said you got a bike in. That's a really cool story. So, was there any chance then, after what happened, did the doctors ever say to you that it may be impossible for you to race again?
Definitely, but like I think I just said I had to go through the process and make sure I was safe to race again. And as soon as I could try and do that, I just did it and just went followed the process of trying to race and trying to get reclassified and to see if I can be eligible to race. And thankfully that happened. But yeah, always knew that would be the goal and aim was to try and get back racing.
How long was that process of getting back match fit, ready for racing again?
My first race again was last October in Turkey, which happened to be my first ever the location of my first international race as a para athlete. So I raced in 2013 at the European Championships, and then again in 2025 at the World Cup. Yeah, so yeah, it was quite a long process from reclassification and trying to build up my fitness and trying to come to terms with my neurological impairments as well. But I'll probably say, well, it's from discharge in 2023 through to competing again in late in 2025. So 2.5 years.
So you mentioned about, like you said, returning back after quite a long-awaited stay away from the sport. When you did eventually get back, did it sort of feel like a cyclical structure really of your life? So from where you first started getting involved with the sports after having a number of injuries, this at the very start of your career, to that moment when you returned again after having obviously more operations for a different injury.
Yeah, it did like it all just sunk. Like that was probably the first race I actually got to enjoy properly and really embrace it.
Wow.
So it actually felt like I was able to really try and take things on board with that race and just what I meant to be back there.
For you then now, is it more about enjoying your racing rather than about getting any sort of medals, going too competitive, just about loving the sport again and being grateful that you're there?
Well, that's what that whole race embraced about. But then I would say it's probably got more, bit more back to the elite side of things now. So now is when I'm really trying to embrace and go back to my roots of trying to strive for performance as well as just really trying to enjoy the race. So 50-50, I'll say.
You mentioned about you're already getting back to your elite stage, you're getting back to your best once again. Do you have aims of getting it to another Paralympic Games down the line? Do you still have any hope of that?
I mean, I'd be stupid not to try, really. So I'll try, but we'll see what happens with fitness and with where life takes me. We'll just see.
Well, I'll tell you what, George, if you do manage to get to another Paralympic Games, I genuinely do think they would be making a movie about you because that would be some story. And even a recovery of just getting back into racing. I think that is awesome. But looking now forward, what else do you want to achieve when it comes down to racing?
I have a silver medal at games. I have a bronze medal at games. There's one colour missing. So I mean, that really says what the aim is. So I want to get back racing and I want to do things, but also just want to enjoy where I'm at. So yeah.
George, I have to give you credit. That is some mindset. That is really cool, like I said. Wish you all the best of luck for that. And then, really, just rounding it off, I've just got a few questions submitted by my audience listening to this. And one of the big ones which kept popping up is what advice would you give to any aspiring athletes that were in that similar sort of position to you? What advice would you give to them?
Just really try and enjoy the moment and try and enjoy the process of where you're going and just the journey you're on, but then just also just try and learn as much as you can. So like that's one thing that the Paralympic Inspiration Program did for me. I had to really got to I really got to an experience to try at the games. And that's what Rio was as well. It was like almost like a practice run. So yeah, just really trying to experience things, but also trying to learn things on the way if you can.
Also, another popular question was looking back, do you have any particular favourite race?
Would have to be Rio, to be honest. It can't not be. It was just awesome.
Exactly that. And finally, what would you say your proudest moment was in terms of your triathlon career? Was it Rio? Obviously Tokyo, one of those?
Um, Probably Tokyo, yeah, because I was just the culmination of years and years, well, decade of work, and just where I really tried to push on my running, and it worked. And it was just a show of what I could achieve if I really set my mind to it.
I think that's the perfect way to round it up, George. It's been a pleasure having you on. And for anyone that might want to keep up to date with your journey, what you do next, if you can make it to another Paralympic Games, how can people watch out for your journey?
They can follow me on Instagram. I'm George_Peasgood. So yeah, just follow along, join in to see where the world takes me.
Get George followed. And remember, George, if you do go on to make it to the next Paralympic Games and you do go on to get another, well, if you do go on to get a gold even, remember me when you're famous here, James McIntosh, and we can always do a part 2 of this podcast.
We'll try, yeah.
Well, sounds like a plan, mate. And yeah, get George followed, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.